Okay, welcome to the Karen Mitches podcast. Today we have Sandra Battaglini.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm great. I feel good.
Feeling good. We're in April now.
Can you believe it?
Do you feel like April is the real beginning of the year?
I was talking about this with a friend, and there's something about the new year, this what calendar is this? The
Julian?
Yeah, the Julian calendar. There's something about that, Jan 1st, that I like. But no, I don't feel like it's the beginning. No, I don't feel like it. I'm just oh, it's spring.
Yeah. And I guess that's what I'm feeling right now is just I'm ready to go. I'm ready to do everything.
Well, after Easter, which was last weekend, I definitely felt a shift. For a lot of reasons, but I felt a real shift. I'm oh yeah, it makes sense. This time of year, it's spring. You know what I mean? You go through that dark winter, and then you come out into the light.
How was your Easter?
Oh, it was incredible. I did a lot of church things. I'm not a religious person. I'm a spiritual person. But I went to my family's their Good Friday mass at a Catholic church, but it really made me mad.
Oh no.
I'm baptized Catholic, but I don't go. But the week before they had a passion play, which my sister's involved in. She's not in the play, but she was helping organize it. And these passion plays are very interesting. It's community led, so they're not actors doing it. And so that makes it so interesting and entertaining in some aspects, but also there were moments that were incredible. They were just you could feel the light in there was amazing. And then so that was lovely, and I thought, oh yeah, maybe I'll go there for Good Friday. I haven't in the last while, many years, go to Good Friday mass, whatever. But it was packed, and these they read the passion play, passion, not the play, they read the passion scriptures or whatever, and it was two guys, okay, and they were, it was so dull and monotone, it was making me nuts. And then the priest who does the homily was just so angry. It was old school Roman Catholic. This guy was giving a shit. He's if you don't have Jesus in your life, but I'm there's no life or whatever. And I was chill out, bro.
Yeah. That's such a weird attitude to have nowadays.
To be angry.
Especially because there's so much interfaith marriage. You could be at a Catholic ceremony, but your Hindu husband is at home. And to be saying if you're not in this, you're screwed is so weird.
It's just the way he said it. It's if you believe in this Jesus Christ consciousness, which I do, I've come into it. And I don't it's not it's not what I think the way that the media has portrayed it out to be, if you're a Christian. I'm not a Christian. I don't again, I don't believe in these religions, right? But I definitely follow this consciousness now. I know it. But
I feel everyone when they're young thinks of religion as oh, it's a dumb story you get duped into, and then you start to learn about corruption in churches and you're oh my God. But then you reach a certain age and you cultivate a faith. Yeah. And it's different. It's not you're this little sheep and you're getting walked off a cliff. It's about having gone through life and knowing that there's something deeper.
Yeah. And just I don't know at what point I just started to get annoyed with the church, and then I wouldn't really go. I think it was teenager years. And then when I started university, in my first year history class, one of the first things we looked at was Jesus, but as a political figure.
Yeah.
And so I was oh, okay. When people are oh, he's not real, I'm I don't believe, I know differently. And then that was very interesting to see it from that point of view. And then I started practicing Kundalini yoga at one point, and they talk about Jesus, right? They talk about they have their prophets. They have their people, but then they would talk about Jesus, and I'm oh, it's so interesting. Roman Catholics don't talk about anybody else except God and Jesus.
Yeah.
But these guys are talking about Jesus. Apparently he was he practiced Kundalini yoga. He went to India, all this stuff. And then, I started working with this healer, and she would always she's very much a Jesus person. And then one day I felt it. I was like, oh, and then that was like, it opened up. And now I'm like deeper and deeper into it all more and more.
Yeah.
Like I meditate on the Bible. But then I'm also like that's the other thing, the Easter weekend, I did this retreat online with this yogi from Costa Rica. And I've been following him for since the pandemic, really. He's like this, I guess he's a lawyer but he's like this, he is like a prophet, but he like just when you hear him speak, like he speaks about world events, and then he's knows these histories that go so far back on like politically and spiritually and religious. And anyways, I'd never been invited to a retreat or got an email invited. I had to pay for it. But then I went in halfway on Easter Sunday. I was like, okay, I was like, maybe I'll join this meditation. And that was like, whoa, whole other level. Like it was another level. And it's, it's still such a cool vibration.
Like you're still feeling it right now.
Yeah. And, and I'm not done because I came in halfway. And so now I'm just sort of coming, like I get access to it for 10 days or, if I want more. But this guy, like what he's talking about is just, again, but it's all this, ultimately it leads to this Christ consciousness. Because, when we were talking about the crown chakra, guys, we were talking about the crown chakra, like, when these things start to like make sense to me, it's kind of like when I see them from multiple points of view. So it's like, when they say, Jesus was crucified, right? So, it's like that the idea or what happened was like, he crucified, he surrendered himself to God, and then was like light. And then I was like, and this is what a lot of different spiritual people say. It's like surrender your ego, give it up. But this is the connection, the crown. So like when you come through the crown chakra, you come into the light. And then I was like, look, Christ, crown, crucifixion. It's all the
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah.
I've been reading a lot. This author called Karen Armstrong, and she was a nun, but she didn't take to it very well. And she left the nunnery, and I think she didn't have a lot she could do professionally. So she had like an English degree and knew a lot about religion. So she started writing about the history of religion. And I think her most famous book is like A History of God, and it's about the history of the three monotheistics. But then she's written on Islam. She's written different aspects, like she wrote about fundamentalism. And she has this one book, and it's called St. Paul the Apostle We Love to Hate. And she talks about Paul the Apostle, like what his life was like, and sort of connecting Christianity within the Roman Empire, and talking about, like, she says how the crucifixion was especially offensive to Jews because something in their religious text said if you were strung up by a gibbet, it made you unfit for Jewish burial. So the crucifixion was like a form of political terror to keep people in line, but especially like hard on the Jews.
Wow.
So then the death of Christ is this like powerful like inversion of that, because the most horrific aspect of the state then becomes how we transcend to heaven. And I was like, I never thought about it in that way, and it really like struck me, and I was like, that's incredibly beautiful. And then she talks about like, because the Roman state was so evil and didn't take care of people, and you could just be like very destitute, but then because Christians start to help each other, and it's Paul who creates the offering, so then 200 years later Christianity is like very, very powerful because people have like good lives because of it, right? Like they have food, they have clothing, and but then the Romans, like the emperor converts to Christianity. So then it becomes like back tied in with the state. But you realize that first 200 years of it, you kind of see like that's the true Christianity. And I think like many people are practicing that now, like it's in their heart, but a lot other people are in a cult or just, like not questioning their government that might be mean while then also thinking they're Christian.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, the Roman Empire never fell. It just rebranded itself. Right? And then it's like they took the guy they crucified, made him the head of their, the brand ambassador. And then, and it's like, who still runs the world? The Roman Empire. Like, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I know that's a bit simple, but like that's what it is. It's pretty wild. And we went to Italy last year on a pilgrimage through my family, my mom and sister's church. And I don't like tours. I don't, I went because my sister's like, she took us, and I was like, okay, I'll go. And it was very messed up because the organization of it was very poorly done, and we were under really extreme conditions. It was messed up, okay? But you go to some of these like early churches that are like holes in the ground, and you feel it's like energy, and it was incredible. Like, that these people were like so devoted, or so like had really like ascended, and you felt that energy. You're like, how is that? How could you feel it like 600 years? I mean, just like Christ, 2,000 years later. And again, Christ is not the only or Jesus is not the first person of this consciousness. You know what I mean? It's a consciousness.
Yeah. And it's like, there's like the cycles of history. There's an ongoing consciousness, and then there's like which area you're in and what are kind of like the people doing at that point. And it is repetitive.
Yeah, there's but now we're coming out of what the Indians called Kali Yuga. You know how they sort of demarcate time through these yugas?
I don't know about the yugas at all.
So like right now we're in ego hell, so it's or Pisces, but we're at the end of ego hell, because like only the ego could manifest this devastation. Yeah. This complete on so many levels. And then we're coming into a utopia. Because what is after all this? It's just all love.
Okay, when there was that, I hate to get into like outrageous headlines, but that thread the other day to end civilization, did that give you a panic attack?
Which one?
Trump was like, a civilization is going to end tonight.
Oh yeah, I saw that. And then I saw I think it was Golfarani. What's her name? Golshifta. You know Golshifta?
No.
She's like a famous actor. If you saw her face, you might know her. But she's Iranian, and I think she lives somewhere in Europe. I don't know. So she took his quote, and she's like, what he doesn't know is the Iranian people will live on. And I just was like, this is just their low frequency. It didn't. I've been shocked by sometimes I do, but like, I don't know. Now I'm just like, it's almost laughable how, and not that they're not putting like really being horrible, but I
guess it's just because when you say like we're at the end of something and then the beginning of something else, I'm like, is there a nuclear war in between here and the utopia?
Yeah.
Yes.
I saw your face. I was like, yeah. I mean,
I'm not meant to live in interesting times.
Well, you are, because you came in. You're here. Right?
I am.
You're here. So,
but I guess I still have, like, because I came up in the 80s and 90s, I still think like I'm in a normal part of history that's taken a bit of a bad bumpy turn, but I guess I don't feel like there's going to be a world war that I'll live through.
But you're living through it. It's happening. It started in 2020, or some would say 29 and 20, after 9/11, but 2020 was a magnificent war game.
Yeah, like you could see maybe like 9/11 being sort of like the beginning of the Depression, and now we're actually in like the war.
Yeah. They're all just like these people who do these things, right? They just plan, this yogi that I was telling you about, he was saying they staged it so well to make it look like it wasn't staged. So they've been planning this for a long time. Like some people would say like these plans have been in the works for 1,000 years. That this, and also not even for 1,000 years. if you look at the Bible, everything that's going on, that's why, like, I don't know if you ever see me do that joke about I stopped watching porn and started reading the Bible.
I know no,
Not
I
that I
haven't heard
expect you
that.
to. I hate that. I was like, hey, you know that joke I do, but I talk about this where, and then I tell people, I'm like, yo, you should be reading the Bible because it's all there. So it's like, once you really see, like, you know, you're like, okay, yeah, I see now this part's coming, and then that part is happening, and this part is happening. Yeah. I mean, they haven't dropped any nuclear
Yeah.
stuff yet. So, but it's all heading in that, it's all pointing there. And again, so that's why right now it's like, you know, where are you going to be? Where are you going to go to? Like, it's like, you ever heard of this, the black snake prophecy?
No.
So the elders, indigenous elders, predicted that a black snake would weave its way through North America. And it was the pipelines, but they didn't know it at the time. But it would weave through North America, and it would poison all the land and the water and the people around it. And that either you would follow that black road, that black snake, or you would go back to the red road, back to Mother Earth. So it's like their program is their program. It's all just so, again, like, once you really get into it, you're like, these people, you know, I saw this one guy talking about, I don't know if it was 50 years ago, that corporations decided that their main objective was to you know, calcify this pineal gland, to attack the pineal gland. And they do it through everything, right? Through their the food, through the content, through vaccines, through medications. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a constant attack here, because this is this eye that sees, right? The
Yeah.
third eye. The pineal gland is the third eye. So isn't that amazing? It's like, that's the eye that really sees. So if you're looking at them, you're like, but when you close and you look and you're like, okay, that's the eye that really sees. And when I focus, it starts to regulate, you know, my nervous system. It does all of that. That doesn't, listen, I say these things, and I'm sometimes, like all of us, like, state of like nervousness, and because it's everywhere.
I think a lot, like, we get distracted by politics, but it really is the corporations that are the biggest problem, because I feel like they just almost operate on their own now.
Yeah.
And like, it's not a left wing, right wing thing. It's just like, no one's moving towards an environmentally sustainable future. Nobody, like, the food quality in America is noticeable,
It's so bad.
And even like I was in
Here
a few different European countries, and one of them was Poland, which you don't think of as like, oh, wealthy, or like everything's high quality there. But I was like, the street food in Poland is better than Canada's, like, going out to like a family restaurant. Like, you're just eating like a ramen or something, and it's like the ingredients are different. They didn't allow like that mass production to set in and like ruin just, and it's like basic, like, day-to-day life is very far away from something like healthy and holistic.
Yeah, like, our problem, like, a lot of it is America. Like, we border this, you know, like, they're the ones that invented all this bullshit.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we still have way better food, you know, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And it's not like you can't get good food in America, but it depends where you are. And you're not, and like, where they go, like, I never buy American fruit. Are you kidding? Like, I rarely ever buy American fruit, and even now, like, I only buy Ontario apples, and sometimes I'm like, okay, you can taste, sometimes you get a batch of stuff and you're like, this doesn't taste like anything. It's terrible. It's frightening. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the corporation. Exactly. It's like, what are these entities? This is all just abstractions, you know? And like, ego constructs. Well, I'm going to have a corporation, and I'm going to make it so that nobody knows who the fuck is running it, right? It's all just like inversion, like devil stuff. Like, it's, you know, if you want to personify, it's all this shit's satanic.
Well, it's the opposite of like what you would teach a child. Like, you like a kid, you would say like, well, you have to always like be accountable, admit what you did, and take responsibility.
Yeah.
And then the corporation is like it's a diffusion of responsibility
Yeah.
and accountability. So like it wasn't ever one person. There's no human face to anything. Like
Every time you have to interact with anything, you're just calling a number. Who is this person?
I saw some really good memes online that were like, you have to like get a job at the company in order to change anything at the company or even talk to someone.
It's funny. Yeah, and it's like right now, this is the pull, right? And the push is like, you know, what are you willing to accept, and how do you, like, if you're like this yogi, his name is Shunya Mutri or Murti, whatever. So he talks about the God self and the trauma self, the ego, right? And so when you're in that trauma self, you're always like, the ego always is full of desire, right? I want this, I want that. I did this yesterday, so I have to do it again. So it's like, isn't that social media? It's like being doing what we do. It's like you're always like, I got to do this, I got to do that, and that's just like, this this is just ego construct, and you're never going to be happy if you follow it that way. He's not telling you don't do anything. He's not saying stop doing what you're doing, but when you if you can.
Yeah, but it's like, okay, so say as a teenager in the 90s, I was already like obsessed with my ego and in my own like what I want. But now it's like what I want is also like physically manifested, because it's like when I look at my phone, it's showing me what I respond to. So then it's like a technological enhancement of that. So now all my wants are in front of my face all the time. So I can like
sick.
Even be more and feel like it's real. Feel like this is the real world showing me all this stuff that I need to get and who I need to be. But it's like, it's just like helping take that drama that I needed to like let go of, and now it's like, no, it's real. It's real.
Yeah. And then it's just got you in that constantly in that cycle, and it's just like futile. So, this guy talks about like when you obviously ascend or go into the God self, there's no desire. It's just the love of God. It's the light. And so, then, like he takes his students will come and ask him questions, or people online in these retreats, right?
Yeah.
So, and he puts them on YouTube. He's got a page, his followers, all this shit. He's talking to one guy and he's like, it's not, or woman, I don't remember, but, it's not like you're not going to do anything. In fact, like once you stop going after it all, then it comes to you and you are like, okay, I can do these things. But then you see who the character is. You know what I mean? It's the ego is a character you created. It's your movie. So have fun. But all this suffering we have, all this, oh my God. And and he talks about this re-traumatization of that we all do, because we're living in the ego. So every time like we have that same thought about something, or like, oh, you know what? I dated this guy, and it's like, why do I always attract this? Because you re-traumatize yourself. You bring it all back to you.
Yeah. Did you get into comedy before or after you got into like meditation and spirituality?
Before.
Okay.
Was it before? Yeah.
When did you
just
start
at
doing
the
comedy?
Same time. I started taking classes at Second City in 1999.
Oh wow.
And then the year later, like you take that improv course, and so like I did a year, and so I think it was November of 2000. I had my first show, and then I was like, oh, this is what I've been looking for. This is what this is like,
Yeah.
So that's, and then I went, I started to perform, and then I kept taking like the conservatory, that I don't know how they call it now, but
I think it's still called the conservatory program. Like you're learning sketch and
yeah. And so I kept doing that, and then I started doing a bit of I did stand up, I think in 2001 a couple of times.
Did you have a 9/11 joke?
No, but I was supposed to be in New York in September.
Oh no.
2001 to go to the Funny Women's Fest.
Oh shit.
I remember being at my office. I was working at this office, and the Jamie, our receptionist, he's like, turn on the TV. And then we turn on the TV, and like in the middle of the office, we just see like, I guess one plane had already gone in, but then we saw another one. And it was like, I was supposed to go like a week later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I was at university, and I remember when I got to the TV, because I would have been in a class when it started, they kept re-showing the first tower falling. So when the second tower fell, I was like, why are they showing this again? Because I was like upset, and I'm like, we don't need to see the replay. But it was like, my sister's like, that's a different building. I'm like, oh my God.
I've had jokes about, I think I had a couple jokes about 9/11. But, it's funny that you say this, because I then, started to, I did stand up. Then I didn't really do much improv. I'd had an improv. We were sort of trying to do stuff, but it never went that way. And then I studied clown, and I really got involved in, like, I mean, I'm still a clown, but I was working with the circus, and we were starting to, there was this wild cabaret that would happen on the East Side for many years. And it was like, it was very cool, because a lot of it was political theater. Plus, like, you're going to see, like, clowns and acrobats and fire blowers, right? Is that what you call it? Fire eaters, whatever, at this show. So we started doing, like, just crazy stuff, like really edgy satire. I mean, satire's edgy already, but then some friends of mine had taken Buffon, which is like the anti-clown. It's like, there's the clown that's the mirror, and the Buffon's the one who is the satire that shows you your hypocrisy.
Oh.
So there's a lot of
I don't know this.
Yeah, and Toronto is a real center for clown in the world. Anyways, my friends were taking Buffon with Adam Lazarus, who's a very well known. He's incredible, and then my friend Phil, he's my friend. We worked together for a very long time. His character for this class show he was like Mr. Oliver, and he was writing a musical about 9/11. So then it was so insane. Like, I just couldn't believe what I was watching. And then we had a troupe. Like,
Did he finish the musical?
We actually did the musical.
What year did you do it in?
We did it. It was called 09/11/11. 09/11? 11, I think. Yeah. We did the musical then, and we put it on stage. And so, you know what I mean? Imagine doing a musical about 9/11.
Yeah. No. I mean, fuck.
Right? So, and then, now it's funny. Me and Precious, she was also in Precious Chong?
I know her name. I haven't met her.
So it was me, Precious Chong, Phil Lutzi, and Christopher Sachin, the four of us in this troupe. And then, but actually...
Did people like it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But we had done sketches of it at this Lunacy Cabaret, and there were other people involved, like Crystal Bartelsi and Kristen McGregor. I think that's all who it was. That was the crew for that one sketch that we did at Lunacy Cabaret. But then the four of us did this musical, in our sketch show, The Specials. We were called The Specials, and we did this show.
I love that.
Yeah, and now, like, we're writing a show about this time at the theater. It's like at this circus theater. So we wrote, and so now we're in the process of writing the show, and our editor is like, oh, I don't know, like, people are not ready. Like, I don't know about, this 9/11, the musical. People are still, upset about it. And I was like, and this was like maybe many months ago. And I know that we're meeting her tomorrow, and I'm sure she's going to be like, because she's like, why don't you do Come From Away, which I never saw. And me and Precious are like, no, it's about 9/11. Like, we're just going to do this. Like, this is how we're writing it, because this is what happened for real. You know what I mean? But I think now, especially with what's going on, I'm not saying people are still not emotional about 9/11.
Yeah.
But the veil has come off about what it was.
I think two things. There's a younger generation that wasn't conscious for it, and then there's an older generation that feels like they're seeing a lot of bullshit in the world. They're ready to unpack things and be like, because I think at the time people just, even if you had questions, people were like, it's a sad time. We need to be on the same team. We need to have this attitude towards this event. And now people are like, everything's insane. Like, people want to feel something truthful.
Yeah, exactly. Everything is so insane. It's crazy. How could it be any more insane than this?
I don't know. Don't say that, because
it's only gonna get more insane. It has to. Because then, there's this quote in the Bible where it says, I mean, I could get the real one, but it's like something like, it's like at the end days, God will pour his spirit onto his people, and your sons and daughters will prophesy, old men will dream dreams, and young men will have visions. And every tongue shall confess, and every knee will bow. Everyone. And isn't that like this confession, all these people who are like implicated in these Epstein files, they're classic. All these people, they're like, oh yeah, I wasn't there that day. You know what I mean? You ever notice this? Like, I was watching a TV show about Auschwitz. It was French and Polish. It was honestly phenomenal. I'll try to remember. It was incredible, and it was about the interpreter at the Auschwitz trials. And so they have all these guys, the heads of the camp, and this guy's like, oh yeah, I was out that day. Like, what day? What exact day were you out? Do you know what I mean? What exact day were you there? Were you not there? Like, and so it's like they have the same, even like when you see these mafiosi on TVs, when on the, like they're like, hey, this guy just got in jail. Oh, I never seen that thing. I didn't know. They all like the Clintons. Oh yeah, I know. Clinton is like, Bill is like, it's incredible. These two, the denial confession of Bill Clinton and Hillary.
Well, he was the first real like public figure that I watched lie. Because there was like, I feel like
about this
in life.
Yeah.
Because like I know there was like the people who came out in the 80s, but I almost heard about them afterwards, like through a parody show or something. But Clinton was the first kind of scandal where I was watching it on the news.
Yeah.
And I was like a teenager. I was like, obviously he fucked her. Like,
come on.
Like it was so crazy. And it's like if you were at high school and you watched your friend lying to the teacher, it would be one thing. But to like watch the president just like trying to weasel out of a bad lie, you're just like,
I know. Isn't it?
This is fucking stupid.
Did you see the video of him? His confession denial video about
the
Epstein?
He looks so nonchalant, and he's like,
yeah, he's like, no matter how many photos they put out of me, I know what I saw, and I know what I did, and I know what I didn't see, and I know what I didn't do. Like, didn't you just say you know what you saw?
The thing that he kind of is looking at stuff like it. He just almost looks like a guy reminiscing.
Yeah, that's so true. And then Hillary, when she's being asked, she's like, I don't have any context for it. And the woman keeps asking her, well, when you saw the photos of Bill Clinton with Jeffrey Epstein and your husband being massaged by a young girl, I'm not here to offer opinions. There's no opinion. But it's like, that's the level of, these are the people, like, the world is like, I've been calling it the pedophile industrial complex, because that's what the fuck it is. Every part of it. I'm seeing it more and more. The job, if you go to work at somewhere, 9.5 times out of 10, you're in this servant master relationship. I don't know why, a couple weeks ago, I was thinking, I went to the store. There's like customer service. They always talk customer service. Even if you walk in the store like a big twat, sorry, you're an asshole, but you expect good customer service.
Yeah.
You're like, what is this service? It's a servant. It's servitude. Because even if you're being an asshole to them, you expect them to serve you, and that's that master-slave relationship. Right? It's all based on that slavery.
To be fair, I don't feel like I'm being serviced anymore.
What's that?
I don't feel like I'm being serviced anymore. Like, I feel like when I go to a store, if I ask the person who works there, like, oh, what aisle do you keep this in? They'll just be like, it might be here.
Yeah, they don't know.
It could be there. I would have better luck just looking for the most organized looking shopper and being like, where do you think this is? And they'll know. But
what I was saying, yeah, exactly. Like, it's crazy. So the day that I went, I was like, okay, so if I go in there with this big attitude, what am I, even if that person isn't being nice and they're out of it, what humanity can I bring? Because this whole relationship of walking into a store with products, we don't know where they come from. It's not the person who made it. They're not getting paid well. Yeah. So, and I'm not trying to defend their poor attitudes or anything like that, but just like, we're past that now. Like, what can we do to bring?
Well, it's hard not to be demoralized in a poorly paid job where that's also kind of like meaningless work.
Exactly. Like, my sister worked at a grocery store like 35 years ago in Sudbury. That was her like high school job at Miracle Food Mart in Sudbury. She was making like $18 or $25 an hour. The head cashiers were making $40 an hour 35 years ago.
Damn.
And then I started to work at one of the other grocery stores, but they didn't have a union. It's like that was that's what a grocery store was.
Yeah.
And so you got like service was like for sure you got service because everybody knew everything. I was a cashier. I had
it was
to know
a real job.
Yeah. And it should be. It's just food. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But then, you know, as it goes.
Any job, like if you're expected to do it 8 hours a day, is a real job. It should take care of you. It shouldn't be like, oh, you didn't get a good job, therefore you shouldn't be able to live on your work.
And, you know, that was a result of like capital and labor after World War II. They, you know, there was so much hard won disputes won by labor, right? So it lasted until I would say probably like the 80s, and when you know they when Reagan rescinded the Glass-Steagall Act, like the Anti-Competition Act, and then subsequently Clinton, you know, during his administration, 60,000 factories left the United States. 60,000, that's in the 80s. What about now? Then you just saw the complete erosion of that working class, and then people just went to hell.
Were the Clintons the first Democratic presidency that wasn't really Democratic? Like,
yeah,
I don't mean that they weren't elected, but like they weren't really the left anymore.
I never, but it makes sense because who was the president before the Democratic? Wasn't it Jimmy Carter?
Yeah,
and I still have a soft spot.
I like Jimmy. Like obviously, I learned about him later, but people beat up on him over Iran, but.
Yeah.
Like,
look, that job is like fucked, but yeah, what happened? I mean,
I feel like it's like he got into power and like the Iran hostage crisis was happening and people didn't like the way they handled it, and then they brought Reagan in. I think Carter only did one term, and it was sort of like, you fucked up this international thing, you weren't a good president. But then it's like, well, what could he have done there? And then Reagan happened, which I felt was a very evil presidency. Yeah. And then it just seemed like we never got back to like any president who like respected workers, respected.
Yeah, no.
It was all this like voodoo economics.
Yeah. I mean, look, the program, the program, or the whatever you want to call it, of the United States, right? Like. Even like obviously Canada, these are all just colonialist structures, and it's just like, what is it? It's just like what do the colonizers do? They steal from us. They come to kill, rob, steal, and there's another one. But that's what they do. They steal from the people who actually have all the creative power, us. Yeah. All our intelligence, all our know-how. What did they do to the healers, the witches? They murdered them. You know, they took our ancestors off their land to then come to this continent and work in their poison factories. Right? All the like what's happening in India, the way they're throwing them off, the farmers off their land. And so the project. So the colonizer project, like it's coming to an end too, but that's their goal. They take over all of it, they steal everything from you, and then they sell it back to you like they're doing you a favor. Yeah. And so, Jimmy Carter was, who knows, but to me he seemed like, oh, it's nice. But I mean, all these presidents, all these people were ultimately, you know, doing the work of, like they were doing the bidding for, you know, some sort of group of people. But I mean, like when you look at Kennedy, like I think that you see these kinds of presidents and you're like, maybe they were better. They were better at least. Because
Eisenhower was a Republican, but when he left office, he warned about the military-industrial complex. Yeah. He said, this could get away from us. And then it fucking did, right? Yeah. So I do think there's some, like, I don't want to say like people aren't guilty, but it's like the way it happens isn't like necessarily like people knew what it was at the time, but it's sort of like they moved in a direction and built things, towards it, even if they didn't understand.
Yeah, I mean, like presidents in particular, or just like...
Yeah, presidents, and even like if you're running a major corporation, like if you get that job and your job is like, we'll maximize profits, you're not necessarily like thinking like, oh, I'm playing into like ruining the human life. And
I think they do. I think if you run any of these major corporations, you all belong to a secret society. Like, I remember, so I did, I did my master's in history, and then I came to Toronto and did like a postgraduate diploma in marketing. And then I started working in the marketing and advertising world. Then I became a comedian like a couple of years after that, because I was taking this woman I worked for was talking about Second City that offers improv classes, and it's good for business people. So I was like, oh my God, let's do it, you know? So anyways, I kept in that world, right? And ended up at this, when I started to do comedy quite a bit, I ended up at this Anderson DDB. They're like a pharmaceutical advertising agency. And that's when I literally was like, oh, this is who the devil is. And you know, what was great about my job was that they hired me as a researcher. Because I have like, you know,
you have a master's.
Yeah, and then I started to do like, you know, I did some research actually for like some documentaries and films too, I think before that. So then I started calling myself a researcher. So I'd put that. So they hired me as a researcher, but qualitative. Not, you know, I'm not doing quantitative. But a lot of the time I was just not doing much. And I came there through an agency. So a lot of the time I'm literally just there I would be printing off my comedy posters. And then work they gave me, I did. But it was so brutal. Like their biggest client was Johnson & Johnson. And that's when I started to get stomach problems. Like it was so fucked up over there. And then I was like, oh, this is... Because
Johnson & Johnson was the one they were causing cancer with like the talc.
Oh, probably. Yeah, I think I've heard the talc, yeah. And you know, you hear them on the phone. You would hear these people on the phone. It was so vicious. It was so bad. And I was like, what is everybody doing here in downtown Toronto in these dumb, tall buildings? What are they doing? Bullshit. Making, like the FDA at the end of the year, they have this thing called clearing their desks. So any drug approvals, they want to rush them through. So, you know, people are like taking drugs that are not even been proven. Like really, if like you look at how Europe does it. So then I was like, the CEO of Anderson DDB was a guy who was from Big Oil. I think, was he from? Yeah. And then that year was the year they made obesity a disease. I was at the meeting. He's like, this is the year obesity is a disease, and we're going to be marketing these drugs to them. Oh. And the way this guy did it, and I was just like, I was so sickened. I only was there for 6 months. I mean, they let me go because I told them off. Because they asked me to do research for Celebrex, which I don't know if you're familiar with. It's like an arthritic medication. And people were getting heart attacks. And so the media was like, oh my God, this medication's terrible. They asked me, Sandra, go find out what everyone's saying. Like everybody. So I was like, okay. So I do. And, you know, I then go and present to them. And I was like, first of all, if these so they first start by saying, they're like, oh yeah, they're talking about Celebrex. They're like, yeah, well, you know, doctors are stupid and patients, like they're blaming patients. So then I just was like, you know, I go, if these corporations started off by behaving ethically, none of this would I had a stack of shit like this. And then you could just see their faces, like they were just so upset to hear me. And 2 weeks later I was gone.
Amazing.
Yeah. Because I was like, are you seriously gonna blame the patient?
Yeah.
So I was just like, you know, and again,
they wanted you to come back with something sort of like, well, maybe we could deflect responsibility this way or that way. And they'd have a few different ones to pick from. And you came back being like, oh, it's us. And they're like, no, it's the patient.
Yeah, it's the doctor. I mean, doctors, I have doctors play a big part in this kind of stuff too. But if they're being told by a pharmacist, I think these are the days where, you know, that a doctor, if it meets a pharmaceutical rep and says this drug does these things, and they're coming off of like, well, you know, these guys are kind of, you know, I've had good success, let's say, with my patients on certain medications, so I believe you I mean, I don't know, when did it start that, like, I mean, I guess it could be like the early 2000s when things went really bad. You know what I mean? When they're putting people on, like, it just started to amp up more and more and more. And it was like, yeah, when CEOs from big oil go to become CEOs of pharmaceutical companies.
And those were like the years that like the opioid epidemic
Exactly.
was. So there was some people who did not care.
Oh, and the offices were filled with these people, like people I worked with. You could see some of them were good people, but they're like, yo, I'm working here. And then the head of the lead advertising guy, who was like Don Draper on Mad Men, he was like the Donald Draper version of this ad agency, and he wore clothes from Moores, you know what I mean? Like, but he was a good looking guy, but everybody just like, oh my God, we praise you. You know what I mean? And it was so messed up. And he's just like, coming up with stuff, just so like, without, dispassionately, but just like, I'm just so smart, because I came up with this tagline or whatever.
Yeah. One of my favorite articles talked about how you could see the role the pharmaceutical companies played by looking at the drug problems in America and English-speaking Canada versus Quebec, because they were later putting all the marketing into French and getting it into Quebec. So then you could see like all the like fentanyl becoming like the number one drug in like English-speaking North America, whereas like the number one drug in Quebec was still like, I think, meth and then coke. And it was like, because the marketing hadn't gotten there yet. Because fentanyl was sort of like, people who can't get opioids prescribed anymore would then move into this like street drug.
Yeah. And those people are what you imagine they are. Horrible. Like, especially like, oh my, I was like, wow. So yeah, Satan. Yeah, that's what...
What was, when you did your master's, what was your area of study? Like, it was history, about what?
Yeah, it was, I know it's all sort of a very poignant time for that, but I did it on women who worked at the nickel mine over there during World War II.
Oh my God.
And I just completed the screenplay about it, which I'd been, my design, like 30 years ago. I mean, I don't think quite 30 years ago, like I graduated from my master's in 96. And then in 2001, I started doing comedy and started meeting people. And at first I was like, I want to make a documentary, but my dream was to write a screenplay. Like, it was both, do a documentary. And so it's, I was just actually adding a storyline to it. But yeah.
So is it a true story?
Yes.
Like,
the screen, it's based on a true story, but when you're writing a screenplay, it's like, the true story is the one that's in the thesis, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, the movie is always just, it's based on true. It's incredible. We had a reading of part of the script maybe about, I don't know, a month and a half ago, and it was like unreal.
Is it a drama?
Yeah, with comedy, but yeah, it's like, again, like, that story is such an incredible story. These women that worked at Inco.
Can you tell me
the
story?
Yeah, so in 1942, Inco rescinded this order in council that, explicitly said that it was illegal for women to work at a mine. So because of the War Measures Act, they rescinded this order in council. They needed the women because the men had gone off to war. And also the hard rock mining industry, it's like, if you were a miner, you didn't have to go off to war. But the men who were working in like the gold mines around the country, they shut those mines down and brought them to these hard metal, because that nickel was being used to make everything for the war. And so these women went into work, and so they did, like, they only did surface operations. They didn't bring them underground. And my thesis is called "Don't Go Down the Mine, Mama," because in the paper at the time, this journalist was like, this song from the 1880s called "Don't Go Down the Mine, Daddy" would have an audience today, but we changed it to "Don't Go Down the Mine, Mama," because they were paranoid that women would take over men's jobs, and they didn't want people to think that. And it was so funny. They would take women's jobs. They had all these things in the paper of a woman operating this machinery, and it's like, look, it's like she's operating an ice cream thing, an ice cream, you know, and it was like one of the most blatant examples of women's very short time wartime wartime work.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the other industries, like the car manufacturing and the airplane manufacturing, a lot of the women stayed on in certain capacity.
Yeah.
But at Inco, once that war was over, the women were gone.
Oh, wow.
And here's the thing, like, so now when we started, writing this screenplay, our editor was like, she's like, okay, we really have to find out. The screenplay is about a woman, because this is how it happened. I was going to do my master's on post-World War II Italian immigrant workers, because my dad was one.
Yeah.
And my supervisors were like, okay, cool, but collect the data from the employee files from the 40s so that you have something to compare to. Then all of a sudden I start seeing these women and Italian women, and then it was like, oh yeah, right, women worked here. Like, you can't really find much about this story.
Yeah.
Right? So a visiting professor from the Université Montréal, Bruno Ramirez, like a very well-known labor historian, is like, you have to stick to the women. So great, I do. And then I meet these women, and it was absolutely like unreal. And then at the time too, like I do all the archives, like the Ontario archives, the federal archives, not Toronto. Oh yeah, I think I did come to Toronto because they had head offices here. And I'm at the federal archives going through their massive ledger books, like these huge books, turning papers like this, and seeing how many tons of nickel went to Hitler. So that mine was making nickel for Hitler. How
are they allowed to ship it to Germany?
Exactly. So guess who the financiers of? Do you know about Inco? You've heard of International Nickel Company? They've been there since the 1880s. That's no longer the company. They're still doing mining there. But guess who are the financiers behind this organization, this company?
Who?
The Rockefellers.
Oh shit.
So these guys were funding both sides of the war, and like Canada was an ally. But because that company was in New Jersey, they take that nickel, ship it to, I guess, I don't know, America, I don't know, whatever, and then send it over. You still can't find a lot of information about...
Because was this before the U.S. had gone into the war?
No. Oh.
Because how are they able to ship it from the U.S. to Germany?
Because they're crooks.
Fuck.
So imagine that. They say like these people, like just the same people, like these Rockefeller Zionist types, that crew financed, they're the ones behind they financed both sides of World War I and World War II, and now this. So there is no side. It's just a crew getting all the resources, aligned. And it was like one, and then crazily, oh my God, there's so many. So one time I'm at the corner, there's a couple from Sudbury, and then there was somebody else there from Sudbury, I think, which was so crazy. And then there was a guy from the US, a mining guy. And then I was like, I talk about Sudbury, and I'm like, hey, I was like, Sudbury is the town that Hitler made rich. And they're like, yeah. And then the mining guy from America knew all about it. And it was so crazy. And so it's like, yeah, that. And then while the war is happening, they're secretly organizing for the Mine Mill Union, which again, I don't know if you're aware of, legendary labor movement, one of the most legendary labor movements on the continent and the planet. So this Mine Mill Union is pretty much like a communist Marxist union. They organize these workers because what was happening was that these workers were, like, the working conditions were terrible. And so the reason I brought up the employee files, so I'm entering these employee files. I enter one where a man, it says he was deceased. I think he fell into one of the cauldrons. And then I find his wife's card, and it said widow. And then I was like, oh my God, they're married. And then I meet her.
Oh my God.
And she tells the story of the morning he goes to work, that he's off to work, whatever. She makes the breakfast, makes his lunch. He leaves. They had a baby, 1 year old. He leaves, but then he comes back to kiss her one more time. And then 20 minutes later, she got a call that that he fell into the cauldron
Oh my God.
and burned. So the story is about, in the screenplay, the story is about this woman who becomes radicalized with the union. So at the time, not this specific woman didn't, but you meld stories, you got to. But yeah, then these women and men were secretly organizing for Mine Mill Union. And then after the war, this union took right over. And then so this editor was like, you need to find out like what the widow benefits were there any? And I couldn't find anything. And then I end up talking to the local that still exists of Mine Mill, and they're a local of Unifor. You know the union that Cask joined? Are you familiar with Cask and the association we started?
No.
Oh, you're not? Okay, that's a whole other story.
Comedy?
Yeah.
So Cask, the comedy union, joined Unifor.
As a chapter. And then I find out that Mine Mill is under Unifor.
Oh my God.
And then I just called them. I was like, hey, can you tell me, do you know about this information? They're like, well, we don't, but a woman just wrote a book about the 1958 strike, which my father would have been. He's not around. I wish I could have talked to him, but I know I remember him talking about it. And so I start reading this book and I discover and that's when I found out about the Rockefellers behind this. And this is a TV show, because this is what I go back to all the time about Canadian stories and Canadian comedy and all this. I don't know if you're aware of the work that I've been doing.
No.
Oh my God. Okay. So I over 10 years ago, I started lobbying for comedians. I wrote a letter to the Prime Minister and went viral. We formed an association and we've been lobbying the government ever since to have comedy. The big thing was to get comedy recognized as an art form and to try and find a better way to cross the border.
Yeah.
I don't know where was I going with that? What were we talking about?
The plot of the screenplay.
The plot of the screenplay. Yeah, and then so what I'm saying, that's why I always go back to the stories of Canadian stories, because I studied history and Canadian stories are incredible. Then I come into this entertainment industry and then you see you're like, this is bullshit. Like, America basically stole our culture. They did. People can argue, like, people like to argue about, well, there's losers in Canada too, 100%. Lots of big losers in the industry, right? Like, and you see, but America has, like, made it their purpose to dominate our cultural landscape, okay? Like, all sorts of dirty shit that's so fucked up, So this story about this union and this story, like, it's such an incredible story. Nobody knows about it.
Yeah. So where are we with getting comedy recognized as an art?
I mean, I just finished writing the big project I was telling you about. I just wrote a policy paper to be used in the next level of lobbying for Cask through Unifor, because now we have this big union behind us. We wrote to the Canada Council, and I mean, I can't pull it up now, but they wrote back to us saying, we support comedy through storytelling and theater. And then but we don't support for-profit stuff like in comedy, music, whatever. So basically it's like what it appears, and what I'll say is, like, they support comedy, but not when it's done by comedians.
Oh.
So writing this white paper was like doing another thesis and seeing, like, because it's a decade now that I've been working with this lobbying and all this stuff, and all the ways, like, it's all melded together. It's really quite unbelievable. Yeah. I think we're very close. Like, we're very close, because there's not, like, and now I just got an article that the comedians in Britain are asking the government to make comedy an art form. Imagine Britain. Okay? So it's like, and we spoke to some of the people behind that. We didn't know that they were meeting with them, but we knew, like, 2 years ago, they wanted to know what we did. And imagine it, like, that's what because we've spoken to many comedians around the world. And the story is the same. Comedians, no matter where you are, we face these very similar issues. The thing that's different about Canada is, like, we border this empire, and then we don't have an industry. And which I even hate these. Look, these words are so crazy and these things are so crazy, but we don't have a trajectory because of America and all this politics that exists.
So what will be the main benefit if comedy were to be recognized as an art? Like, how would that affect me as a stand-up?
Well, It's kind of like these are the ways in which an industry or a sector gains legitimacy. That's what we learned through lobbying the government. The Department of Finance would always say, like, everyone was on board except for the Canada Council for the Arts. They're snobs. They're terrible. They're terrible. But the finance people were like, look, we have to be able to prove the economic impact of comedy. But first, you need to, it's like a rights movement. Any rights movement, like, I always would look at the civil rights movement and be like, it's so similar because it's about gaining legitimacy and the right to be able to access, and support, to access money and support from the government. Because every industry or every sector, how shall I say, however big they are is a direct link to is the direct result of how strong their lobby is.
Yeah.
Right. So this is more like, okay, we want because we need access. Otherwise, it's as precarious gets.
Because there's
no
limits
conditions.
like we can't get grants through the government because we're not an art.
Yeah.
But it also affects one's ability to tour abroad.
It's everything.
And you need to, especially in Canada, be able to tour other countries.
And it's not like as if like, especially in this configuration we live in, it's not like every comedian's going to get an arts grant, right? And that'll probably raise a whole other can of worms because people will be like, those people always get grants. But then at the same time, CASC created a foundation like the music, like Factor Grant. So we basically early on, like about a decade ago, our biggest allies were in the music industry. And we learned what they did. So basically music in Canada in the 70s, musicians were being played on the radio and not being paid. And a group of people came together and they did exactly what we started. So now, like, music gets the most money in the country. It's lauded around the world. People like the way that our musicians, like the whole system is really quite unique. And it's no coincidence that we've turned out all these superstars. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the benefits are like, but then you talk to lots of musicians and they're struggling like any artist. And that's a whole other, that's part of that, it's related to the problem, but it's just where the arts are in the capitalist structure or the colonizer structure.
Everything is extractive. And I feel like it gets more so because they keep coming up with new technologies that become a way to hide behind the exploitation or hide what they're doing. Like,
now there's all this unpaid labor that we're doing, these podcasts. Like,
yeah.
I'm not saying you wouldn't have done a podcast anyways, right? But now the pressure, like, we're expected to be content creators first, then comedians.
Yeah.
And like, while that's like, look, I love making videos like anybody. And, we see like how the direct benefit of having a consistent, what it does. You sell out shows, all these things, but it just depended when you got in. Like, there's the early adopters. Like, for me, when it all changed, I was just in the middle of like, it was COVID, right? And so much was going on. I was working on CASC, and then my own family, I had to be a caretaker. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, I resisted it for a long time too. Because I was like, what do I do? But then now here we are, right? And then now everybody is like, this is gonna end too.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like it used to be like, oh, now there's this way to get your direct audience, and you saw people make a bunch of money. But now it's like, it feels like everyone has to do it. So it becomes this extra expense. And
then guess what? When it changes again, and when they steal all our assets, because they're not going to be ours, then what are we going to do? Or whatever they're going to do, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, and this is what was coming to me several months ago was I was just like, everybody's running around getting their equipment, filming stuff, and then you go on people's profiles and you see everyone's always looking at the numbers, right? I do. Mm-hmm. And so now it's created another level of competition and separation where I was like, man, like if we could create like a comedy network where everybody comes together, we've got like 20 film, like cinematographers and, script people. And then even if we're doing it where we're not necessarily getting paid, we're creating good quality. Like obviously not everyone's going to be involved, but this new age is about community. If we keep going so separate and individual,
Yeah.
it's, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean.
It's terrible.
Because we have to be like stronger than the companies that are trying to steal from us. So it's not going to be just like one person on their own. It's going to be like the collective of people.
Yeah, and I really I still feel this very strongly where I'm like, literally that's what we need, because then you don't feel like it's so daunting. And again, this difficulty we have to get into the United States, and even making content, you still need capital. And it's about like, how many people have $15,000 to go to the United States? Not everybody. These things are all like, people will just be like, oh, that's the way it is. It's the way you want it to be, maybe. It's not the way it is. It's the way that, like, and so everyone just keeps following this demonic pathway, and it's bullshit. Like, why are Canadians, like, why do we have this difficulty getting into the United States when we have a free trade agreement with these people?
And like, their culture is so prevalent here. They make so much money off of us.
Yeah.
There should be, it should be a sort of reciprocal thing.
Yeah, that's what the title of the first, that letter I wrote to the Prime Minister was called Just a Little Reciprocity. It was so innocent, you know, as if I'm writing to this Prime Minister, this guy. I mean, I never intended to lobby for comedians. That's crazy. It's insane, right?
Well, I'm glad that you did.
Yeah, I mean, it was a mission. It's a mission, but you know, now it's like amazing that, like, I'm not on the board. I haven't been for a long time. And I finally was like, okay, I'm no more unpaid labor for me in that regard, because people just think, like, some people are like, oh, that's your job now. And it's like, no, because I'm not getting paid.
Yeah.
Like, I can't keep, you know, you have to move. And it's amazing that it's still around. It's bigger than ever, because now we're like with Unifor.
Yeah, because I just started following Cask because somebody got a grant to tour on them, and I was like, who gave it to you? And they're like, you don't know this? And I'm like,
yeah, that's what I mean.
I don't really know a lot of stuff yet.
So CanCom is the foundation we created. Cask is the association that lobbies for comedians' rights.
Okay.
CanCom is the foundation.
So that's who I'm following on Instagram.
Yeah, CanCom. So again, we created CanCom that's based on the Factor grant, which is $100 million grant. And that's a thing, like, you know, it's interesting. There's so many parts of my life where I would be like, I don't know. But when it came to comedy, I'm like, that's what I want to see CanCom go. CanCom will grow to 100 million. And I really, I know, I don't even have to say I believe. I know that, like, there's going to be so much money for Canadian comedy, and we'll be creating the best comedy that's ever been created.
I love that.
That's what it's going to happen. It's happening. Like, look, materially, what's changed in a decade since we started doing these things? You know, you could say that things are worse in a lot of ways materially, right? But there's things that weren't in place before. You know, comedians get paid when they do shows. Even if it's $20, it's $50. Most people can't get away with profiting too much off comedians anymore. Our peers anyways. Obviously, the corporations still can, because they're gross. But, yeah.
I love that.
I know we're at the end of the hour.
It goes by fast. Yeah, we are.
Oh my God.
Thank you so much for coming on, Sandra.
It was so nice to talk to you.
I love talking to you. Is there anything, this isn't going to go out right away, but maybe like within like 3 weeks from now, that you want to plug?
Yeah, my new special is coming out, Dear Jesus.
Dear Jesus.
And my white paper should be coming out. I mean, white paper. It's like, yeah, it should be published soon. And I mean, within the month, I would say.
Amazing.
I mean, it'll be out there.
Can we search for it online?
Yeah, it'll be online for sure. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's a policy paper. I mean, if you like policy, but.
And where do we find Dear Jesus?
It'll be on comedy bars. It's called CB Max. So on their site on YouTube.
Amazing.
Yeah, I'll be on YouTube. It's YouTube, baby. And then obviously the audio is going to be on all the other platforms.
Amazing. Okay. Thank you so much, Sandra.
Oh, thank you. So nice.